Welcome once again to another highlight video for the Forza Horizon 4 Olympic Games qualifiers. Today is day 7, so we're taking a brief vacation to the proud nation of Italy. On your screen you'll see a live look as our last Italian entrant, the Pagani Huayra, closes out the day here on the track, but first let's take a look at the very exotic lineup of competitors for the Italian qualifier. Our first competitor racing live on the track right now is the 2012 Pagani Huayra. The hypercar manufacturer Pagani was first founded in 1992 by a former Lamborghini employee, Horacio Pagani, branching out on his own to develop an ultra-high-end luxury supercar with top-level performance and build quality. Debuting its first model in 1999 with the Zonda, Pagani quickly made a name for itself as the premier Italian manufacturer of ultra-exclusive supercars that not only put out incredible performance, but also stand in their own right as artistic pieces of design, as the entire vehicle is hand-built with both functionality and beauty in mind. The Pagani Huayra is the successor to the Zonda, first produced in 2012 and limited to only 100 units worldwide. So this 2012 Huayra here is one of those 100 examples and stands ready to compete in the S1 category by just barely qualifying at 900. So with very minimal to no upgrades, the rear-wheel drive hypercar will duke it out with Italy's best and brightest, and rings in at a value of $1,310,000. So let's take a look at the numbers here for the Pagani. And we can see that its great asset will likely be its speed there at 8.8, but handling and braking still pretty strong at 8.4 and 8.8 for sure. Acceleration and launch, though, not looking quite the strongest, as the car is rear-wheel drive and won't have the advantage of racing transmission or performance upgrades and things like that. But 700 horsepower, 737 pound-feet of torque, very strong torque numbers there actually, and 3144 poundage there is definitely not too heavy either, so some solid numbers. And taking a look at the tuning, we see 3.2 and 6.1 for acceleration, not the strongest numbers we've seen, but they're about average, and 234.5 top speed is pretty strong though, and if it's able to make anything close to that, it should do decently well in the back straight. Braking numbers 112 and 275, pretty solid numbers overall there for sure, and 1.13 and 1.27 for lateral G should be enough to get around the track with a decent time. All these numbers looking relatively average among the pack, but for a car that's running just about completely stock, I mean, this sure is an impressive display from the Huayra. And next up is the 2004 Maserati MC12. Dating all the way back to 1914, Maserati has had a rich racing history as well as with the production of many sports cars over the decades. The MC12 was debuted in 2004 as Maserati sought to return to racing after 37 years, looking to enter into the FIA GT Championship, which had been previously in the 90s, had seen legendary cars such as the Porsche 911 GT1 and the McLaren F1 GT, which we've already seen in this qualifier. But the MC12, though, was developed in 2004 as the road-going version of the MC12 Versione Corsa, which was entered into the FIA GT Championship, as well as the American Le Mans Series races in 2004 and 2005 to good success. With only 50 units of the road car being produced, the MC12 is exceptionally rare, and is heavily based on the platform from the Ferrari Enzo, using a slightly modified version of its V12 engine, but with a completely different body and a much longer profile. Purpose-built as a race car for the road, the MC12's low-slung and long-sweeping styling managed to generate a tremendous amount of handling and grip, making it a strong competitor for the nation of Italy in our qualifiers today. This one, though, has an all-wheel drive swap, some weight savings, and some relatively minimal engine and platform upgrades that bring it to a total value of $1,043,250. So, taking a look here, at the numbers for the MC12, we can see very strong handling and braking numbers there at 9.3 and 9.5, along with some solid acceleration and launch numbers, and a speed at 8.2 as well, so looking quite strong all around here. And 652 horsepower and 502 pound-feet of torque. It's a bit on the lower end, but consistent with a lot of our other contestants so far. And at 3,138 pounds, decently light as well. So taking a look here now at the tuning numbers, you can see 2.3 and 5.5 for 0 to 60 and 0 to 100. Certainly above average numbers there. And 221.1, a solid top speed. That's a good target for a qualifying track on that back straight as well. And braking distances at 107 and 262 looking very strong. Up there with the best for sure. And 1.25 and 1.46 for lateral Gs are some really strong numbers for handling as well, so this car is looking very, very strong for the numbers here, and perhaps the best all-around car we've seen so far, with some of the best handling and braking, paired with above-average acceleration and speed. Our third entrant for the Italians is the 2008 Lamborghini Reventon. Lamborghini, of course, having a very long-standing, rich history as one of the premier exotic Italian automakers, founded by manufacturing magnate Ferruccio Lamborghini in 1963, with the objective of creating a refined grand touring car to compete with other established Italian brands like Ferrari. First debuting with the legendary Miura grand touring car in the 1960s, and ultimately turning into Ferrari's biggest rival in the exotic car market, Lamborghini became known as the brash, no-holds-barred, unapologetic alternative to the somewhat stuffy culture of Ferrari ownership. As Frank Sinatra himself once said, "You buy a Ferrari when you want to be somebody. You buy a Lamborghini when you are somebody." Unfortunately, though, for the Lamborghini ownership, their reckless ways led them to bankruptcy several times, and ended up being sold in 1998 to Volkswagen Group's Audi division. This meant that the wild, untamed Italian craftsmanship that Lamborghini models like the Countach and the Diablo had ended up changing with a bit more practical German refinement with the early 2000s models like the Gallardo and the Murcielago. This car, the Reventon, is an ultra-rare special edition Lamborghini model that shares all of its mechanical elements with the top-end Murcielago LP640, with the exception of some modified aerospace-inspired styling and interior components. The Reventon was unveiled as a special model for the 2007 Frankfurt Motor Show, and only 20 units were produced for the entire world, meaning that our contestants so far just keep getting rarer. Hard to beat only 20 units, though, as Italy is sure bringing out the best of the best. But at any rate, this Reventon, sporting the stock all-wheel drive setup, some weight savings, as well as a few engine and platform upgrades, that bring it to a total value of $1,675,000, making it actually the most valuable of our Italian competitors. Taking a look here at the numbers, though, for the Reventon, it's looking quite well-rounded here, with 8.2 speed, 8.6 and 8.9 for handling and braking, quite good there, and 9.0 and 9.7 acceleration at launch, very strong overall. And 683 horsepower and 518 pound-feet of torque. Pretty standard for this level. 3,261 pounds, slightly heavier than some of the others, but only just barely, so strong numbers still for sure. And if we take a look at the tuning numbers, of course, we can see 2.5 and 5.9 for 0 to 60 and 0 to 100, so a bit above average for 0 to 60, but only just about average for 0 to 100 there. And 224.6 miles per hour, solid top speed. Braking distances, 109 and 272, pretty strong stuff there for sure. Some of the best. And with lateral Gs at 1.25 and 1.37, it's looking very good there for handling too, so the Lamborghini definitely looking strong. Next up, and first of two Ferrari entrants, is the 2010 Ferrari 599 GTO. Ferrari, of course, the most iconic Italian sports car manufacturer, starting all the way back in 1929 as founder Enzo Ferrari created the Scuderia Ferrari racing division of Alfa Romeo. The Ferrari production car brand, though, was founded in 1939 and began producing cars in the 1940s only to make money to fund its racing efforts, as Enzo Ferrari's primary passion was racing, reluctant to produce road cars at all. However, Ferrari quickly became the most iconic Italian exotic brand, and its deep connection to racing pedigree only strengthened its image. As time went on, Ferrari had cultivated a culture of luxury, speed, passion, and exclusivity, with the opportunity of buying one of their vehicles extended to the customer as an invitation to join the Ferrari family. Today, Ferrari remains one of the most popular and opulent exotic brands, with a lineup of both front-engine and mid-engine sports cars sporting the famous prancing horse. The 599 GTB Fiorano was a front-engined sports car model produced by Ferrari from 2006 to 2012 as the successor to the 575 Maranello, with this version here being the 599 GTO model. The GTO name, given to some of Ferrari's highest performance models and revived in 2010 for the 599, and on this car was the highest end version of the 599 that was street legal, and essentially a road-going version of the 599XX track day car. The production of the GTO was limited to 599 models for the world, and is one of Ferrari's highest performance models of the late 2000s and early 2010s, with this one sporting an all-wheel drive swap and a twin-turbo setup that blasted up to 885 horsepower, and a price tag of $734,100, so in fact our most powerful Italian entrant and the least expensive as well. So looking at the numbers here for the GTO, you can see that it's definitely going for a bit of the speed strategy there with 9.0, but still at 8.2 and 8.8 handling and braking should fare decently well in the corners also. And again here we have 885 horsepower, 612 pound-feet of torque, so definitely on the high end for sure, but 3,711 pounds makes it about 500 pounds or so heavier than the other Italians. But taking a look at the numbers for tuning, you see 1.9 and 4.8, very strong acceleration numbers owing to all that power and the all-wheel drive swap. One of only 3 competitors so far we've seen under 2 seconds 0 to 60, and about the top 3 for 0 to 100 as well. And then of course 243.1 top speed, very strong there, definitely some impressive numbers for this top section. But braking though, 111 and 272, still quite good, definitely a bit above average there. With 1.19 and 1.3 lateral Gs, not quite as good as the other Italians we've seen, but still better than most of the cars in the overall lineup. So the GTO, by the numbers, is looking quite strong and should be pretty speedy. And last but not least, we have the legendary 1987 Ferrari F40. Developed in 1987 as an aging Enzo Ferrari sought to produce the ultimate performance road race car to complete his legacy, the F40 was created with its sole focus being on pure performance. With very little creature comforts, the F40 was truly a race car for the road, in response to what Enzo Ferrari saw as his road cars becoming too plush and comfortable. With a twin-turbocharged V8 and a wild space-age styling, the F40 was built out of carbon fiber Kevlar and aluminum to reduce weight, and stood at the pinnacle of Ferrari's road car lineup, ultimately becoming perhaps the most iconic exotic car of all time. Though it was succeeded by the F50 and later by the Enzo and the LaFerrari, the F40 remains one of the most iconic, valuable, and praised performance cars of all time, and often sells for at least $1 million. With Enzo Ferrari's death in 1988, it was also the last car he had a hand in, leaving a legacy for the motoring world that still stands the test of time today. This F40 has been entered for the Italian qualifiers as the second Ferrari entrant. It sports an all-wheel drive swap, more weight savings, and larger turbos, which bring it to a total value of $1,250,750. Looking at the numbers, though, we can see very strong numbers across the board, it seems, with 8.3 speed as well as 8.5 and 8.9 handling and braking. Also 619 horsepower and 549 pound-feet of torque is perhaps a bit lower than some, but decent numbers all around, and at 2,782 pounds is definitely the lightest Italian entrant we've seen so far. Taking a look at the tuning numbers, you can see 2.4 and 5.8 for 0 to 60 and 0 to 100. Decently strong numbers there for sure, a bit above average for our competitors so far. A top speed of 219.4, certainly a strong number there, and a good number if it can reach it for our track here. And braking at 121 and 282 is perhaps a little bit weaker than some of our competitors, but 1.23 and 1.34 for lateral Gs. Quite strong handling there indeed, so the F40, especially for a car from the 1980s, is looking real strong going into qualifying. Alright, now that we have all the lap times in, we can reveal the final times for the Italians. In 5th place, we have the 2012 Pagani Huayra with a time of 320.144 and a top speed of 223. A solid time there for the Pagani and clearly a good speed figure, but ultimately was just a little too slow around the corners to be able to put more of a competitive time up. But in 4th place, we have the 2008 Lamborghini Reventone with a time of 317.237 and a top speed of 218. Very good time there for the Lamborghini, but only being 4th place sure means the Italian competition is quite strong. And sure enough it was, because in 3rd place we have the 2010 Ferrari 599 GTO, running a time of 316.877 and a top speed of 225. Strong acceleration and speed numbers really did well for the GTO there, putting up an impressive time in the 16-second range. But in 2nd place, just ahead, we have the 1987 Ferrari F40, the other Ferrari, putting up a time of 316.756 and a top speed of 216. So just barely beating out the 599 GTO and snagging another phenomenal time, really. But our number one contestant qualifying for the nation of Italy is the 2004 Maserati MC12, coming back with a stunning time of 315.779 at 216. just barely off the number 1 spot from the Carrera GT, but the only other contestant so far to run a time in the 15-second range, so quite an amazing run from the Maserati, just about neck and neck with the qualifying leader. But at any rate, now let's take a look at some highlights from these cars and an examination of the MC12's lap against the Carrera GT. Alright, now let's take a look at the Maserati MC12's lap against the Porsche Carrera GT. Only off by about 0.3 seconds, so very, very close between these two. Both some incredible, amazing cars, the two best we've seen so far. And already we can see starting off they are just about neck and neck. Going through these checkpoints about the same time. Going now through Ashbrook. You can see the Maserati looking just a little bit faster there. And you can see that. Going through the bridge corners now. Just a little bit ahead. That really nice corner from the bridge. That Carrera GT, though, puts that one in the lead. Look how much time that saved. Maserati MC12 not quite able to make as much time through there. Cutting the corner. So you can see the Carrera GT just a little bit ahead on speed. And pulling away with the lead down through the Reservoir Straight. And still ahead as we make our way into the forest section. Carrera GT looking like it's hanging on to just a little bit more speed than the Maserati. But the gap is closing, it seems. Getting quite close now. Coming in towards the end of the forest section. Carrera GT making light work of those corners, though. Looks like the Maserati's got a few more miles per hour faster here. And now going through the horizon corners, it's getting real close. Carrera GT just ahead onto the back straightaway. Looking like the Carrera GT just slightly ahead with some slightly better acceleration numbers for 0 to 60 and 0 to 100. But the Maserati, I believe, put up slightly faster top speed. So you can see right about here, the Maserati overtaking in speed. Just a couple miles per hour faster there. And now bridging the gap. Fairly close. Carrera GT, though, taking the corners just a little bit better, it seems like. Just slightly in the lead, but not by much. Maserati, good corner there. Bridging the gap. Coming down to the final town corners. Trying to cut that one on the inside. Smart plays from both. And the final corner. Carrera GT still in the lead. And there it is, coming down the straightaway. And you can see it. There we have it, very close between these two, but just off by about 0.3 seconds. Now to debrief, let's take a look at our current standings on the qualifying leaderboard so far. And we can see that Italy did very well today, putting up the strongest times together as a nation, with 4 out of the 5 entrants running times in the top 8 spots. Italy ended up taking here number 2, 5, 7, and 8 on the leaderboard. So a really good result there for them, and making our qualifying events all the more competitive with some stellar times all around. Looking at some of the data, though, shows us just how well balanced the Maserati is there on the second row, with all of its numbers being at least average or above. And we can see it's very comparable to the Carrera GT, only very slightly slower for acceleration, but a little bit higher top speed, and pretty much the exact same when it comes to braking distances anyways, but definitely a little bit better on lateral G, so very well balanced all around, and a strong competitor there. The 599 GTO, though, from Ferrari, putting up some solid acceleration numbers that are close to the McLaren 650S, our current leader there, and a solid top speed run as well that puts into third place for speed overall behind the Bugatti EB110 and the Cerbera Speed 12. Long way to go to catch the TVR for sure, though, at 234. Quite a long ways. All in all, Italy bringing out some very strong competition, though, and stirring things up to great success as we now have a very strong competitor to our leader, the Carrera GT, which barely retains its lead going into the final round of qualifying. Alright, well that just about does it for our coverage today, the Italian qualifiers. Some real exciting stuff out there from all the Italian entrants, but especially from the Maserati MC12, which will surely make the championship race all the more exciting. Stay tuned, though, as we have only one more nation left to qualify, and it's a big one. The United States of America is set to round off our qualifying events, and there's some rumors going around that they are going for it all and packing some serious heat. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned, and we will see you next time.